Welcome to Grim World, where true crime lives.
On this episode of Grim World, we discuss the Gainesville Ripper. Kevin Williamson, house-sitting in Los Angeles, watched the whole thing unfolding in Florida. Noticing that a window was open, he was struck with fear and was inspired by the fear to write Scream, which has now become one of the most iconic horror movies. In August of 1990, over 3 days, investigators would find the mutilated bodies of 5 college students in their 3 separate apartments. Everyone at school was on edge. Students moved home, buying guns, staying with friends. No one wanted to be alone, and other students just transferred schools to get away. The victims are Sonja Larson, 18, Christina Powell, 17, Christa Hoyt, 18, Manuel Manny Taboada, 23, and Tracy Paules, 23. Sonja Larson was born to parents Ada and Jim. She was outgoing, kind, sweet, shy, loved working with children. Sonja and Christina Powell tried getting a dorm together, but nothing was available, so the girls moved into an apartment off campus. Sonja was planning on studying science and pre-engineering. Sonja was a member of SADD, Students Against Drunk Driving. Sad. Christina Powell was excited to be starting college. Powell is planning to become an architect. She is active in youth church groups. Her parents were so proud that they paid for her room and board. Christa Hoyt is going to Santa Fe College on scholarship and was planning to transfer into studying chemistry. Her nickname was Glowworm because she was always happy. She wanted to become a police officer. Tracy Paules grew up in Palm Springs, northwest of Miami. Tracy loved to dance, especially with her sister Lori. Even though she was 2 years younger than Lori, the sisters were tight. Tracy's father worked in construction. The family is not well off, but Tracy graduated with honors in 1983. She worked full-time as a paralegal, saving money. In 1990, she was going to be a senior with intentions to go to law school after graduation. Tracy and her roommate Manny were close, though they never dated. He was 6 feet 2 inches and very handsome. He was in the National Honor Society, played guard on his football team, and was in the drama department at school. He wanted to be an architect and worked as a bartender to pay for school. August 15th, 1990, was a Thursday. Sonja and Christina had just moved in. Christina's furniture and other belongings were coming a few days later. When Christina's family arrives with her furniture, there was no one answering the door. The apartment had no phone yet, so on that Saturday morning they are just banging on the door, hoping that nothing was wrong. Finally, they got someone who works at the complex for assistance. The police were called so that they could check the apartment. Upon entering, a horrifying scene lay before them. The scene was so bad that the maintenance worker had to leave the apartment to puke after witnessing it. It appeared that the intruder had entered the apartment, encountering Christina first sleeping on the couch, then found Sonja asleep in her bedroom. He put tape over Sonja's mouth, stabbing her multiple times. After killing her, he posed her naked on the waterbed, then going back to the couch to stab Christina multiple times, rape her. He mutilated her breasts. Her hands had been bound with tape. Before leaving, he removed the tape from their hands and covered the bodies with a dishcloth and dish soap, maybe to hide fingerprints, clean up, or destroy evidence. A few hours later that Saturday, another murder was reported close by. As with Sonja and Christina's apartment, the intruder pried the door open with a flathead screwdriver. Finding no one there, he waited for someone to come home. At about 11 a.m., Christa Hoyt came home. She was surprised from behind, never seeing her attacker. He placed her in a chokehold, duct tape over her mouth, and taped her hands, leading her into her room, raping her and stabbing her in the back. Suddenly, he turns her over and sliced her abdomen from breastbone to pubic bone. Yuck. The attacker left the apartment, returning later that day to decapitate her, placing her head on a shelf facing the body, so whoever found her would be completely horrified. At this point, it was the thought that it might be the work of a possible serial killer, forcing the University of Florida to cancel all classes for a week. A few miles away from the murders, cops responded to a bank robbery in progress, though by the time they got there, the thief was gone. Teller stated that the robber was wearing a ski mask. He may have gotten a red dye pack. These look like money, but is actually an explosive device that emits red dye and red smoke shortly after leaving the bank. That night, a deputy sees a man walking into the woods and chased him into a wooded area. But he found a campsite, but no one was there. On Monday the 27th, the killer strikes again. He entered the apartment the same way as before. Manny Taboada was asleep inside. The killer stabs him, which wakes him, causing him to fight back. The attacker continues to stab till Manny succumbs to his injuries. His roommate Tracy comes out into the hallway to see what the commotion was. Spotting the intruder, she ran into her room, locking the door. The attacker breaks in the door, tapes her mouth, binds her hands, raped her, and stabbed her. He posed her on the bed with her feet on the floor, similar to the prior victims. He left Manny alone. Over 3 days, there were 5 victims, and a pattern eventually started emerging. Entry with a flathead screwdriver, same mode of attack, small, young, brunette woman. Developing a profile, they noticed that there was another similarity. Each building had an entry point that faced the woods, making it easy to escape and hide quickly within the trees. FBI, state troopers, and media were turned to for help in the investigation. The media coverage was a double-edged sword. Details are getting out, and pressure was placed on investigators to get answers and charge someone. Ed Humphrey, a University of Florida student suffering from mental health issues who was not taking his medication, diagnosed with bipolar and prescribed lithium. He has had 3 car accidents. These were thought to have been suicide attempts. His parents had a contentious divorce. Even his picture was that of a convincing murder suspect. The neighboring community would call in tips about Ed when he was doing anything, including wearing camouflage, walking around, or using a knife. He made a good suspect due to beating his grandmother so severely that he fractured her face. God, what a psycho. People started judging. But he is not a good guy. They're A-type. Bundy was charming and good looking, but also a serial killer. He managed to fool friends, family, even a serious girlfriend. Ed was arrested and his photo was shared all over social media. People in the community were convinced he was the guy. The murder stopped when Ed was arrested, so police started building a case. In 1990, a semen sample was obtained for DNA testing. At the time, you could determine the blood type from DNA. It was found to be type B, but Ed is type A. The police pressed forward. Investigators felt they had enough to charge him because he had similar hair. They kept him in jail on a $1 million bond due to the assault charges for beating his grandmother. Police in Shreveport, Louisiana, thought that these college murders were eerily similar to a triple murder in November 1989. Tom Grissom, his 24-year-old daughter Julie, and her 8-year-old nephew Sean all were gathered at Tom's house celebrating Sean's birthday. Sean's dad was on his honeymoon, having gotten married the week before. Tom, Julie, and Sean were killed on November 4th, but the bodies were not found until the 6th, the neighbors having noticed that the cars had not moved for days. Police entered the home to find Julie in a similar pose to Sonja. She was stabbed multiple times, her hands and mouth bound with tape. Then the tape would be removed and taken with the attackers. Testing the semen in Louisiana and found that it was the same blood type as the sample in Florida. A connection was found between the murders in Florida and Louisiana, though no closer to finding a suspect. Cindy Juricic lived in Shreveport and vacationing in the Florida Panhandle with her then husband, Stephen Dobbin, when she heard of the murders in Gainesville. It made her think about a guy that she knew back home from church. One night, Danny Rolling was over her husband. Stephen came into the room and said, "He has got to go." Cindy asked why. Stephen said that he has a problem. Cindy asked, "What kind?" Stephen replied, "He likes to stick knives into people." She never saw him again, but started thinking about him and decided to call and report everything to Crime Stoppers. Police searched the name Danny Rolling and got a hit, finding that Danny had been arrested on September 7th, 1990, 10 days after the murders of Tracy and Manny, and being held just 40 miles south of Gainesville for robbing a supermarket. Danny Rolling, born May 26, 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana, to Claudia and James. His parents were married when his mother was 19 and found out only a couple weeks later that she was pregnant. James was previously in the military and then a police lieutenant in Shreveport. He was not happy about their growing family. He never wanted children and made sure that everyone knew it, including his wife and children. He abused his wife and kids. The abuse of Danny started at 1 year old, when he beat him for crying wrong. OMG. When his brother Kevin was born the following year, the abuse got worse. Why have kids if you don't want them? Claudia did try to leave multiple times, but always returned, even though the abuse kept getting worse. Physical abuse happening more than once or twice a week, and almost constant verbal abuse. He didn't let the family celebrate birthdays and holidays. Dad even beat the family dog so severely that the dog died in Danny's arms. What an a-hole. At 8 or 9, Danny had to repeat the 3rd grade due to missing so much school due to illness. School counselors thought that he suffered from inferiority complex with aggressive tendencies and had poor impulse control. By 11 years old, he tried to find healthy ways to deal with his turbulent home life. He learned to play the guitar, playing hymns, and writing songs. He may have dreamed of being a country singer as an adult. His life again was sent into a tailspin when his mom tried to commit suicide, ending up in the hospital with deep gashes in her wrists. This event was the last straw for Rolling. This was when he started self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. At 14, Danny was caught by his neighbor peeping into their daughter's bedroom window. For this, he got into trouble with his father, who gave him various beatings. After this happened, Danny tried to enlist in the Navy, but they didn't want him. He then tried the Air Force, getting in, but not for long. During his basic training, he had been taking acid on a regular basis. He got caught and was discharged as a result. At 19, he met his wife, Omather Halco. They married on September 6, 1974. They had one daughter during their short marriage. She divorced him because he started to abuse her and eventually threatened to kill her. After his divorce from Omather, he raped a woman who looked like her. That same year, he killed a woman in a car accident. Over the years, he landed in jail across the South for burglary and armed robbery. When he was released, he was sent to live with his parents again in Shreveport. Then one day, in May of 1990, he got into a huge fight with his father and chased him out of the house at gunpoint. Danny left and went to get a gun himself, then going back to the house, shooting his dad in between the eyes. As a result of his decision to shoot his dad, Danny had to go on the run, living the life of a drifter. While sitting in jail 40 miles from Gainesville, the police contact the Air Force to get access to his health records so that they could check his blood type. It was type B. This may be the guy investigators are looking for. They looked deeper, found armed robbery that happened the day of Christa Hoyt's body was found, the day they found the campsite. They reviewed the evidence found at the campsite, including a tape recorder. Investigators realized that the tape inside the recorder hadn't been played, so they pressed play. On the tape, they heard a man singing and playing guitar. The lyrics of the song were about a drifter going crazy. The singing eventually stopped, and the man starts to talk about hunting deer and how to shoot them with a fatal shot. The man starts to talk in the third person, revealing his name, Danny Rolling. In November of 1991, Danny was charged with 5 counts of murder, though the trial was not starting for a few years. During the time that he was waiting for his trial, Danny decided that he was pleading guilty and admitting what he did. On April 1994, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. He was executed on October 25, 2006. Before dying, he had admitted to the Shreveport triple murder. Today, there's a portion of a popular graffiti wall that has been untouched since it was used as a dedication to the Ripper's 5 victims. In 2010, the University of Florida installed a plaque on campus and planted 5 trees in honor of the victims. You are watching Grim World. Don't forget to subscribe.